March 24th, 2017. This is the Construction Progress Coalition Friday call-in. Our guest today is Jeff Sample, IT Director with Gallegos Corporation. And also with me is co-founder of CPCoalition, Sasha Reed. You guys want to say hi real quick? Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. Good afternoon, everybody.
Where are you calling in from, Jeff?
I am calling in from Wolcott, Colorado, but you all will know it a little better as Vail, Colorado. We're just a little west of it, so we call it Vail. It's Wolcott, but we call it Vail.
Awesome. And so, Sasha, where in the world are you calling in from today?
I am actually in Houston, Texas, where it's about to thunderstorm. So
Yeehaw!
Something you don't get in LA. Yes.
Well,
Welcome to Houston.
We are sharing in your rain up here in San Francisco. I'm sitting here in the Autodesk One Market Center, so or our office, not center. Sorry, with Lori here. But yeah, let's go. Let's go ahead and get started. So the topic today is the IT manager's perspective on digital collaboration and cybersecurity. Let me click past here. Whoops. So going into this, if I can. Sorry. We're practicing a brand new Prezi here, which is new for me. So as with everything, we have a learning curve. All right, here we go. So the mission of the Construction Progress Coalition is to improve digital collaboration between design, build, inspect, and operate professionals through a shared knowledge platform or of open source best practices and lessons learned. And really that's a mission statement that's progressed over the last 3 or 4 years now through the CPCoalition, really starting with GCs, Kyle Hughes, and a handful of other GCs back in 2013, again in 2014, adding architects, engineers, as we continue to get the message out about PDF standards and shared panes in digital collaboration, learn more about the challenges of both inspectors as well as the owner-operators of facilities that look to use those PDF drawings downstream. So the way that we're really trying to attack this is through a three-pronged approach, and it really starts with crowdsource best practices. You can see a quote here from Kyle Hughes, the co-founder back in 2013. He is with Skanska, by the way. He says here, our aim is not to necessarily standardize, but to push the industry in the right direction. And so that's really where this idea of collaborative guidelines that are trying to push for folks towards the better usage and adoption of digital open source standards, PDF and otherwise. A big focus of that early on was that the PDF, while often thought was owned by Adobe, was relinquished in 2008, became the International Standards Organization, ISO 3200. You can see here and see a bunch of information on the website there at constructionprogress.org/PDF. And right now we're doing these Friday call-ins and other media, trying to get more stuff populated on the YouTube site. Also trying to do more conference presentations and having meetups at conferences. Speaking of which, you should, if you're headed to the Core Groundbait conference, you should join us Wednesday, March 29th. We're going to be doing something from 5 to 6 p.m. That will be in meeting room number 2, which I understand is just outside of the expo hall. So if you're at Core, the first evening networking, grab a beer, come over to meeting room 2. We're going to have a cool open mic discussion. Chris Langiza is going to talk about app fatigue. I think Jeff will be there as well as Sasha. So be a good discussion. But what we were talking about today is connecting different perspectives. Today, really, the two perspectives that we're looking to connect is the IT manager, Jeff here, and his experience with all of his technology users at Gallegos, the builder's perspective right now. But I want to hand it over to Sasha real quick to talk about, I know they just met for the first time in Vegas last week at this AGC AGC Tech Summit. And Sasha, with that, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the panel discussion you guys talked about?
Yeah, it was really great the way this kind of came together. Jeff had been following some of the things that we were doing online and immediately resounded and saw that this was very much in line with his perspective as IT, which was unexpected, but very welcome. And so we put together a panel discussion in Vegas during the ConExpo for this one first of its kind AGC IT one-day tech summit. And the conversation that we had was really looking at multiple perspectives, IT perspective, the sole proprietor's perspective, and the BIM VDC perspective, which, as we all know, oftentimes are at odds. But we sat down on the stage together and we talked through one of the common themes, which was cybersecurity, risk, and collaboration, which seemed to be at odds with each other. And one of the things that we came down to was that the people, which are your greatest asset in the talent, also are your weakest link. So how do you balance those two seemingly disparate things? And as an IT manager, Jeff had such a great perspective, being that he shared with us, coming from IT, that's his expertise. That's what he does really, really well. He relies on his BIM DDC managers to educate him on what goals they're trying to accomplish in construction. And then it allows him to be an expert in his field, them to be an expert in their field, and really kind of work together rather than working against each other. So it was a great conversation, and we're glad that we could pull it in here today for the CPC meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, I do want to pass it on to Jeff, but I wanted to give another quick share as we try and share all sorts of media, and a great media podcast you guys should be checking out is the TED Radio Hour. Jeff shared with us that there was one that came out recently on open source. Really blew my mind. There's one on open sourcing building products and manufacturing homes that really would disrupt PDF and disrupt a lot of things. But with that, Jeff, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about yourself and your shared pains.
Well, thanks so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It was really great to be on the stage with everybody last week and to start having these conversations. So to have you guys bring me in is really cool. I'll give you a really quick idea of my background. I've been in the industry, in the technology industry, for the last 18 years, but I've only been in construction for about 3.5 years. My main area was in resorts for years, but I actually did a lot of work in hospitality, and we did a lot of work in healthcare. And that's where I kind of started to draw the comparisons between my healthcare background and my healthcare experiences with where we are in construction. But then I took a break from all of it and went into development to try and round myself out better. And that's where I started to understand collaboration, SaaS design, and a couple of the other things you're going to hear me talk about. But mainly, one of the big keys that I bring, and we'll be on the next slide with it in a minute, is data visualization and analytics and the ability to look at that data. And I really encourage you to go ahead and read that TED Radio Hour, because while the construction side blows your mind, it's a beautiful part of how we all come together, because the open sourcing of the internet is what brought me to that article, and how the internet wouldn't be what it is today if they hadn't decided to open source it. So the power of what you guys are trying to do here, and what now I'm a part of trying to do, is open sourcing this platform to make it so powerful. So you see on Nathan's slide there that we have this beautiful group of software that we want to bring together and want to harness the power of it. Why do we want to harness the power of all that? Well, we want to harness the power because if you look on the right, you have all these areas to gain from it. But unfortunately, this is a slide from a McKinsey report that actually Chris Lengizer wrote an article on. And you see way down in the bottom there is construction. And I think that is such a painful thing for this. Painful is probably not the right word for it, but it's disappointing for me, because the power of that data and what you can do with data when it's all grouped together and it's all normalized so you can work with it, the power is it'll blow your mind. The ability to pull in weather data, the ability to pull in census data, the ability to pull in traffic data so that we can figure out when to do our scheduling, when to do deliveries, when to do things, when to build things. There's just so many things that big data can provide that if you're not paying attention to it, and you don't have access to it, you're just naturally falling behind.
So Jeff,
I'm really
a little bit, real quick, because you come from different industries. You have experience in solving this in what other industries before you came into construction?
So if you look, we have real estate and rental, we have healthcare providers, and then there was finance and insurance. So if you look there, that real estate and rental right in the middle. I worked with a lot of real estate companies. And I know healthcare was in here when I was there. Healthcare providers are right there. They're really, that's one of the things that's supposed to be part of the EMR idea, is that as we digitize those personnel files and we start to aggregate all that data across the world, we can start to get really powerful information about what it's predicting and telling us. Because, just like in our safety programs in construction, we want to go from lagging indicators to leading indicators. The only way to get to the leading indicators is to get all of this information, to digest it, and then actually do something with it, to visualize it, to put it together. And it's really important because to get there, we all have to have this conversation. And that was what's so unique about what Sasha and Nathan and I were all a part of last week, is that we were having, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess it is, we were having a conversation. And I want to invite everybody that's on the call that if you don't know about it, we just did the AGC One-Day Technology Summit call. But what we were really after is to get the information we need for our summer conference. So for those of you that don't know, there's an AGC IT Conference this summer on August 3rd and 4th. We're bringing it to lovely Denver, where we get 360 days of, or 350 days of sunshine a year. So come join us for it, where we're going to take what we learned from those conversations and actually get some actionable technology. You know, we all get that app fatigue on what we, you know, it's this shiny object or that shiny object. Well, now we had that conversation, so we removed a lot of the noise around the shiny objects. But we have to bring those shiny objects back in and make sure we do something actionable with it. And that's where somebody like me is so passionate about coming into this industry and creating a conversation. Like Sasha said, I love technology, but I also love it as a business tool. But I don't know, or didn't know, because I've only been in construction for 3.5 years. I have to rely on my project engineers, my VDC people, my estimators, to know what it is they need technology to do. And to do that, what I found is I was in, you know, people's offices, bang, bang, bang on the door. Let's have a conversation. Bang, bang, bang. Have another conversation. And what all of us decided to do, what would be more effective and better, is to bring this to a larger audience, bring it out in front of everybody, and have the conversation. And then we can do something with it. Because just like we found out on that stage, you know, with Benjamin Crosby and I, you know, Benjamin just wants to get a 4 gig file to somebody. And what's he going to do if the IT guy doesn't give him a secure way to do it? He's just going to do it however he can, probably through Dropbox.
So Jeff, on that point, I've got to imagine there's a lot of our listeners are probably Bluebeam users that their IT manager isn't a huge fan of Bluebeam for any number of whatever reasons. Why don't you talk about your experience as an IT person with Bluebeam and what you're at least hoping to do with it moving forward with Gallegos?
Well, and what's really cool about Bluebeam is their whole transition. So we're trying to use Bluebeam as a stepping stone, and it was really effective with moving from paper to digital paper, all right? So a lot of the times when you make that transformation, you can't just jump all the way into the pool, you're going to drown. You got to take a couple of steps. So, you know, we took a lot of things, like we took forms, we took things like that, and we just digitized them into PDF, but the workflow changed. Yes, they're holding a device and not their clipboard, but it worked. And then what's so interesting about companies like Bluebeam, and what I want to see us in the construction industry push for more of, is more thought like this. So now they've released Studio Prime. And what Studio Prime does is it takes their Studio product, which is a really great collaboration and not project management, but project holding tool where you hold your files. And they're starting to build a larger enterprise idea so that an IT person like me can remove some of that headache. Right now, or the way it used to be, is you started your studio project and then I had to be invited and be an administrator and go in there. Well, they did that because they needed to see if it worked. Well, it worked, and then everybody took off. And now they're building Prime. So somebody like me can go, ooh, wait a minute, here's another new stepping stone. I can use their APIs and their new built-in technology to pull what's on a file server. So yes, there's still a lot of those folks in construction, including us, that still have a lot on an internal file server. And I can take that and I can use the API through Studio Prime and I can bring it out into the cloud. And again, Bluebeam's created a stepping stone. And we need to look to software companies to push them to do that. They have to make sure a product works first, and then they have to make sure a feature works first. But we have to push them to grow those features and provide those things we need. Because one of the reasons IT and the folks in the field don't get along with it is because IT doesn't have visibility into it. Well, Studio Prime just gave us visibility into it. This is what we need, and if we don't have the conversation, we can't figure it out. Benjamin Crosby and I had that conversation. I was able to go and get him reasons why the personal version of Dropbox is not what you should be using for your business, and why the business version is probably the right one. There's solutions that we all know about, but if we're not having the conversation and we're not okay being uncomfortable, right? Benjamin's got to be in my world of technology and be uncomfortable. I have to be in his world of VDC and BIM. And trust me, I'm really uncomfortable in there. You know, I'm uncomfortable in PDF some days, let alone BIM and VDC. So but it's okay to be that. I mean, but I know that's a little bit uncommon, but you got to look at it. You know, your favorite thing is the IT comes in, or you're so smart. Well, what, is the person whose computer I'm working on not smart? No, they're just smart in something else I don't do. Don't let me try and go build a building. Trust me, every time I walk on the job site, there's 2 guys on each side of me making sure I don't walk anywhere I'm not supposed to. So, but does that make me dumb? No. Does that make them dumb because when I put the iPad in their hand, it feels a little scary? No, it's just not what they do. So have the conversation, be okay, both sides getting uncomfortable, and you'll find in the middle, you create something that's really cool.
And I think if I can, one thing that's also important is on the technology side, it's we're here to solve the problems. And so likewise, we have to be okay saying we only solve 20% of your problem today, or we only solve 70% of your problem today. We're not the easy button. We're not solving 100% of it. And what's emerging is this call or this need for honest conversations where you and your customer, which your customers are internal, they're the VDC BIM manager. So you guys having an honest conversation about what you know, what you don't know, what you want to try to figure out together. And then I think that's so important why Nathan has brought technology partners to be a part of this conversation is then we come to the table as technologists and we say, well, we're only able to solve X amount of that problem today. But if we partner together, watching and learning as you move towards your ideal solution, then it helps to inform our decisions from a tech standpoint to make sure we're bringing to the market exactly what's needed, which is, you know, this idea of a hackathon. It's kind of like an ever ongoing hackathon within the ecosystem of business and then business intelligence. And so I think it's great that Nathan has us here because then it keeps us honest and we have to be transparent as well. The same goes for us as well.
Well, and I think what was so, or real quick, Jeff, because what was so cool about that, Sasha, at the AGC Tech Summit was that organically, without any of us that are actively involved in the CP Coalition, the CP Coalition gets brought up by, I forget who was in the crowd, but he's a gentleman with Sage that was very active with the COSA, the Construction Open Standards Alliance, which is very much about open source, open standard that has expressed interest in partnering or how we blend together with CP Coalition because they're very much a collection representing the technology integrators on the technology side. We're sort of trying to represent more of the industry side. So I think it's so great to see these different players wanting to try and come together and, you know, being here in Autodesk and having great support from Autodesk and Frank Moore and those folks that want to see this come together and recognize that we're all part of the solution and we're all part of the problem. And how to each of us, you know, as you said, you know, Jeff, sort of learn to trust each other, learn to integrate, and, you know, anything you want to add on to that.
Well, and I agree. It's having all 3 groups together. I will give everybody on the call a heads up. If any software company does tell you they can do it all, that's your key to walk out the door. Because nobody can do everything well. It's not possible. They have to be able to integrate well. But you're right. It's the conversation, and I think that is what's unique, and it's what drew me to Sasha and Nathan right away. Was that look at what you have. You have industry, you have tech, and you have software development. Look, all 3 of us working together and the honesty to say, look, we only do so much, but if you solve 20% of my problem today, that gives me hope that you're going to solve 20% more tomorrow. And if you're going to involve yourself in what I do as a business, then that's going to give you an opportunity to figure out the right solutions that will actually work.
Wow, that was a perfect segue at the perfect time to dive into a group discussion and see who's on the call. I have pulled up, and no, this is not scaring you as it might have scared Sasha earlier. This is a screenshot of what you may be seeing in your Zoom box. And if you go to the More section, there's a chat box. And you can see there's both a link to access the Bluebeam Studio session that has version 2 of the PDF guidelines. We've also got a Google Doc version. We also have a chat box to ask questions because really a lot of our discussion today was less about the specifics of PDF data consistency, but more just the need for general data consistency and integration. Probably looking more at some of these workflows at the job site and a lot of these areas that are in all honesty, currently blank and need to be filled in by our grassroots practitioners. So with that, I'm going to see if there has been any discussions or chats or questions. Maybe while we see if there's any questions that come in, Sasha, do you have any questions for Jeff, or want to dive deeper onto any of the topics he hit on?
Yeah, I think, Jeff, something that you said that was really interesting early on was it was kind of an incremental step from paper to digital. And I feel like so many times we swing for we're swinging for the fences, and we forget that sometimes you can bunt till you get on first base. From an IT perspective, can you talk a little bit about how you can leverage those bunts to first base to kind of build then either access and trust, or start to work that towards a larger tech solution?
I love the analogy, playing a little small ball. I think that's the best way you can play the game, right? Is play small ball. And really, when I came in here, it was a shock to me, and I came from the technology side where if you throw anything out there, they eat it up. So it was interesting to see that not happen here and have to adjust the way I did it. And I'll give you this real easy one, and it's a PDF one, of course, because we were scanning everything in the background here, so we were getting all these pieces of paper, and it was like, well, how can we make that not change so much? So we found an application called iAuditor that you kind of roll through, and it makes a digital piece of paper. It's the same daily report that you did before, but now you can do it on the phone. And folks were making phone calls on it, and on their phones anyway, and they were starting to interact with their iPhone. So it was a natural piece to put in their hands. And we only changed one thing. The flow of the sheet was the same. The information they were providing was the same. So it limited the noise in the background and just made it a simple change. And what was really downstream great was that was the field change, right? So they just went from writing it on a piece of paper to doing it on their iAuditor. But what was great was now they're kicking up an actual PDF into the organization, and the organization, which has a lot of back-end users that are much more used to working with PDF, was then able to do more useful things with it, was able to store it where it needed to be stored. In the old days, it was all these paper boxes, and then at the end, they had to gather all that paper together. And what was really interesting is then after that, when we had, as we all love to say, the final phase of construction, litigation, when we had to go back and compile the report, instead of having to spend all this money on compiled reports to hand over to a lawyer, we could use Bluebeam Stapler to staple a job together of all the PDFs of the dailies and hand it to somebody, and they were able to quickly build a picture of what actually happened on site through those dailies using the PDF documents to do it. And they could do it a lot faster, which gave me return on my investment because lawyers cost money. And it also made it a faster resolution. And in fact, when we presented it that way to the group we were dealing with, we never got to litigation. We were actually able to show it to them. We were all able to come to a conclusion and a consensus because we were able to come back with that information in such a concise, easy format for everybody to look at.
You learned the first lesson in construction CYA.
Yeah, I didn't know that was part of the phase.
And path of least resistance too, not just CYA, but path of least resistance.
Yeah, and the stepping stone thing is just beautiful. I mean, I love that move. And even digitizing behind it. We can't always be successful we can get to a paperless world. I do believe that 100%, but we're not going to get there tomorrow. So we have to figure out where we can digitize it when too. So some of our folks are still having trouble with that. We're still working with them to get past it, but we were passing that paper along, and now we're digitizing it along the way. So again, we're taking another step, using it one more piece of the tool. And that's the beauty of, all these tools that have so much. I mean, if Bluebeam knows this, if you go into their software, I think their users only use about 10 to 20% of the software on average. The beauty is everybody uses a different 10 to 20% depending on who you talk to. If they would all get together and have a conversation, I can't imagine what they would come out with.
Wow. And I unmuted Frank Moore if he's able to share any of his, wisdom in 25 plus years of open source digital collaboration in the AEC industry. Because I think regardless of PDF, this is a challenge as old as time. Are you there, Frank?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You want to share any thoughts?
Oh, just, it's what's the old expression we used to use at computer vision? Trust is a must or your drawing is a bust. You ever hear that one? The day Dad used to crash every 5 minutes.
Frantically hitting save.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it's all yeah, there's no shortage of technology to throw these problems, but I don't think people are ready to absorb all of it. So,
Yeah.
just
And I would agree with you, Frank. And I don't think implementing software is the place to start at all times. And in fact, I think it's 9 times out of 10 the wrong place to start. The right place to start. And I can say that because one of the things I love to say is I like to fail. So I came in here through technology and a couple of things and failed hard. Because, you know, when you're talking about IT infrastructure, great. That's what I'm a professional in and I get it. So your email will continue to work, right? But I throw actual technology at a construction problem and it failed horribly. Why? Because I didn't actually look at the process. So what I was throwing at them didn't fit the process. And as we quickly learned, what technology does really well is take a broken process and make it go kaboom, and it's gone. It will, you know, we like to call that recnology. You know, it's not technology, it's recnology. And we've been very successful at some recnology implementations. And you have to go back and you have to look at the process, because technology is here to enhance things. It's really not here to fix them.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm just thinking, Frank, I mean, we've had this challenge before, and we've had this discussion about born digital and stay digital. I know, at least in my time at DPR, that was a huge IT thing. I said Frank, I'm sorry, I meant Jeff. You know, how do we keep things fully digital? Because there's so much value in all that back end metadata. You know, we've talked about metadata from a micro level in our calls in the past of just keeping consistent naming conventions and other things. But I think what you're talking about is from a company-wide perspective. You know, can you make the daily work that folks are doing inside Bluebeam on those PDFs or whatever, you know, PDF markup tool they're using, that they're capturing that data. So where have you found successes? Have you created any successful tool-to-tool integrations in your time at Gallegos thus far?
We've had a couple actually. So right now we're integrating with Sage, and we're pushing the envelope. And in areas where we weren't able to find those integrations, we were looking for partners to do it. We found a company called Rivet that is actually specializing in bolting things together in the construction industry by being a host for APIs. Because the other thing somebody like me doesn't want to do, I'm a one-man show. I don't want to grow necessarily what I have to handle. The beauty of a studio product is it's not my problem, it's Bluebeam. I just have to make sure I can get to it. So I don't want to bring it too much more in-house and get us away from what we do as a business, which is we do construction. So I want to lean to those groups, and Rivet puts your APIs in the cloud for you. Even though it's an on-prem solution that I'm bolting to a cloud solution, they're going to bolt it for me. So we have that one going. We also did a custom integration between Sage and ADP because we're managing our ADP because HR, that was the right platform for them to be on. So we used a little bit older school technology to bolt that together, but we bolted that together just so that we can send our payroll over and we can process our payroll through it. But we still do a lot of what we do in accounting through our Sage system where they're comfortable doing it. And, you know, that's what I'm about. I'm not about individual 100% point solutions, but I'm about in letting software do what it's born and built to do. You'll see lots of software that has a core competency and then a lot of other things bolted on top of it that isn't necessarily what their core competency was. And so I like to stick to core competencies because that also doesn't hold you to anybody then either. Because if they're doing limited amounts of work, you can move from them. And you should be able to move. The best software companies in the world should tell you, we want you capable of leaving our product because we want to earn your business every day and we want you to want to be here. You don't want anybody that's got you, and once they've got you, they're not going to let you go. That's not the solution you need to be in because you need to be nimble. You need to be able to move.
Well,
you need to be able to bolt these things together.
So that's a great point because at the last Bay Area bug meeting I was at was XL Construction. I saw DJ Phipps on the call, so I'm going to call him out a little bit, but actually give him some props. So I was very interested in seeing how they were integrating the digital dashboards for better, iPad navigation, through Bluebeam. But I know some of the challenges we had talked was how do you keep the consistency within like an IT perspective between, I think you had an Ignite was one system, or if you had a wish list, sorry, DJ, for one thing that would integrate that doesn't currently integrate today with Bluebeam. Is there anything you would want to share? And maybe even Jeff can figure out a way to do it, or Sasha may know something we don't. Anything you can think of?
Well, actually, we just heard that Bluebeam and Ignite are working together for some sort of back-end integration. So that was the one that we were hoping for, is either using Studio Prime or something to kind of tie in with our project drive, so that we're only doing work in one place. And that's why we're not leveraging studio sessions, because we have Ignite. So it's almost a duplicate effort in order to push that stuff out for the iPads. So if there's a back-end integration where the work's being done in one spot, and then Studio Prime and Ignite are syncing with each other, then you kind of get that the back-end sync. Then you can leverage some of the power of Studio Prime and compressing those images, yet still keeping that native PDF whenever you need to do your closeout docs.
So when it comes to BIM, where does BIM fit in all of that? Because obviously there's a lot of overlap, right? If you're on a BIM job.
There is, and most of our jobs are BIM jobs, but it all started a while ago, ironically not just in the same place that where Sasha is right now in Houston with my previous company, where it was there was inconsistency when we would show up on a job site to kind of help the job coordinate work, and the first question would be well, where are your current drawings? And that always seemed to be an issue. Everybody had different file formats, naming, stuff like that. So that whole digital plan room, virtual plan room is what we call it, kind of started there. We brought it over here to Excel, and it really pushed it even farther into getting it in the hands of our people. But what it does is it really helps our field personnel have information in their hands so they can make decisions, so that they're not making decisions based on bad information. So we've got it rolled out on about 8 to 10 jobs.
You said something really important there, though. I think sort of underlying that the 2D document is the contract governing document. That at the end of the day, your CYA, as much as we all want it to be BIM, and I am too, I'm the biggest BIM advocate. How many cities, how many municipalities are, or even owners are saying BIM governs over 2D, and it doesn't. And so that's where you see this focus on the 2D. I think a little bit, unfortunately, hopefully we can get them aligned. But do you come across issues where 3D and 2D are not aligned, sort of because of that or other reasons?
That's why I have a job. It's to align the 2D to the 3D and kind of really make it work. And it's, there's still a lot of things today that aren't integrated into the BIM model. So it's stuff that we add, but we still will do spatial coordination and constructability review. But we have a process in place where we do a 2D reflected ceiling plan coordination. That's all done with PDFs, because then we can integrate in some of the devices that are in the ceiling but aren't in the model. So we overlay that, color code it, and share it amongst everybody, and it gets easily done that way, that you can identify those clashes and resolve those before they get to the field. I mean, Nathan, you've been in the industry, you know what it's like when they get to that last level, and you got a fire sprinkler, a duct diffuser, and a light all in the same light, and it was missed in coordination.
Well, and that goes back to the PDF guidelines and some of the importance of things that you wouldn't think are important, like sheet size and plot location, because you're trying to overlay versions and across disciplines. And if those grid lines don't line up, then you're spending how much more time, what's the cost of lost efficiency just because of your time spent realigning documents that should, per national CAD standards already be aligned, right?
Well, if I can find a way to get people to stop using a Romanesque font and printing those to PDF, that would be fantastic. I mean, I have a pretty complicated lab job right now where the design team did everything in AutoCAD, pretty large design firm, and it was all done in AutoCAD using a Romanesque font. And we all know that Bluebeam at the moment doesn't recognize a Romanesque font very well, so you have to OCR it. So then our whole process of creating that virtual plan room is really difficult, because a lot of those sheets and stuff don't hyperlink back to each other because it can't read it.
All right, we got to get a rebuttal from an architect. I see Chris Freddy's laughing through the chat box. Are you there, Chris? I think I unmuted you. What's your rebuttal?
I don't have a rebuttal. I think it's a totally accurate statement. And I'm sure I've often been the one causing the issues that, that you're dealing with there. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, even if, regardless of who creates it, everyone's got to live with it and deal with it. So it's one of these rising tides, right?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But yeah, and that's really where we've understood that the inspector side of things, and a lot of this can even be driven by, oh, well, that's what, the city wants it to look like, or that's what it can be a lot of different reasons. And until we chase down those rabbit holes and understand those whys, we can't start to change the hearts and minds, as James Benham said on the Contact Trio last week, to really start getting the software and technology to work better together. So with that, Roberto, you want to, I think you just typed in something. Architects got to maintain the model and produce 2D drawings that essentially become the contract documents. That is the permanent set. So absolutely. Yeah. A lot of it does come down to contracts. So hopefully we'll have a future Friday call-in where we do get the AHJ, the authority having jurisdiction in the permitting side, because that is a big part of it. So we'll look to gather those folks in the future. Jeff, Sasha, any parting words before we close down? Or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of rebut to Roberto's comment, was that the architect, they used CAD, so there was no model maintained. So those of us who've been in the industry long enough knows what it's like to deal with 2D CAD drawings, and those don't play as nicely with PDF setup as Revit does. Bluebeam and Revit have actually worked together very nicely. So you can immediately tell right away whether you have a set of PDFs generated from a Revit model or a set of PDFs generated from CAD files. Absolutely. Yeah, the SHX fonts and others. And if Alan Engel was on, he would talk about 3D PDFs as well. And when it is a good, well put together Revit model, you can get, obviously those who are in the BIM world would prefer IFC or other direct integration, but a lot of just, folks that just have a PDF viewer, 3D PDF can really embed all that metadata within that structure as long as it's coming out of Revit. So you're right. Or another 3D parametric authoring tool, because there are others out there. Yes. Can I throw in another comment too, Nathan? So we missed you at we had another bug meeting this weekend at Smith Group's office. And great. So that was a pretty cool thing, a little bit outside of the box here, but some sort of nugget that you've been through is, I guess Smith Group got OshPod to use studio sessions to start the markups for the OshPod review process. Awesome. On the was it on the the Cathedral Hill project? Yeah, for Sutter Health, right? I think, or was it one of your projects? Yeah. No, it wasn't one of ours. Yeah, we're not that big. That was the big one. Unfortunately, since then, I don't think it's happened. We were trying to do it up in Sacramento, and again, it comes down to the person. The OshPod folks in the Bay Area like the idea of doing it, and it happened. The OshPod folks in Sacramento didn't like the idea of doing it, and it didn't happen. And at the end of the day, it comes down to people. And if there's one thing we can learn from all these discussions, that it comes down to conversations, comes down to understanding, with them, what's in it for me, and trying to see the different perspectives and all solve this digital collaboration challenge together. Let me go around the horn real quick for Sasha. Any last thoughts before we close up? I just was wondering, Jeff, if people wanted to get in touch with you, kind of like minds and shared perspectives, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Mm-hmm. Twitter. I know that's how we connected. Twitter.
That's how we connected. So I'm going to stick with the Twitter thing. So it's at jsample81620. Ooh, I have it. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And I would love to continue the conversation. And that would be my parting gift to you all, or talk to you all, is reach across the aisle and talk to us. Especially those of us trying to come into construction. There's a huge boom in technology here, and you're going to see more and more technologists wanting to come across. But it was very hard for me to make it over here. And I want to encourage people that if more folks like me with other industry experience make it over here, and you reach out and reach across the aisle, you'll find that we're here to make your lives better. You build buildings, we build infrastructure. We enjoy watching you use it. That's how we get job satisfaction. You get job satisfaction most of the time by building buildings. We get job satisfaction by building an environment that you'd have a playground to do the job that you need to do and do it more effective. Yeah, let's get some BIM and operations and other folks to come to the AGC IT Forum this summer, so it's not just a circle of IT managers. Yeah. Well, and we would love to have that. That would look great for us. And architects and engineers.
Everybody.
I've been reaching out, architects, engineers, CEOs, owners, anybody that knows that this stuff can help you and can advance your business. Come and talk to us. Come and be a part of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, thank you guys all so much for calling in and joining part of the discussion. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. Sasha, always a pleasure. And for those of you who will be at the Core Groundbait conference next week, we will be there again Wednesday evening, 5 o'clock, meeting room 2 in the convention center. With that, thanks a lot, and we'll catch you on a future Friday call-in. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Woo.